start our brown bag, I'd like to welcome everybody to be here for the first spring quarter brown bag, and thank you for making it. And today we will have our two awesome faculty will do a history-breaking brown bag topic on the first online learning community, and that's truly a history-making topic. And thank you for our faculty who come here to support this topic. And Teri Tucker is our frequent speaker for the brown bag. In in 2014 to 15 school year, she had a topic on how to engage, how to create an engaging learning community in online class, an instructor's perspective. And this time she will have a co-speaker, Jennifer Barson, Geology. I'm so glad that I can listen to, I have an opportunity to learn from you today now, both of you. So let's give them a prod. And shall we introduce ourselves to our two speakers? We start from Elodie.
Elodie Guzman, Camel.
John Whitmer, Astronomy.
Travis Warner, PE Athletics.
Barbara Williamson, English.
Heather Keast, English. Jennifer Matsuda, Camel.
Heather Morgan, Library.
Cameron McCormick, Geography.
Kenny Cummings, Business Management.
Ping Ping, Sociology. Please start.
Well, thank you for coming. I'm Teri Tucker. I teach Anthropology for about 8 years. I teach online, hybrid, and face-to-face classes.
Yeah, Jennifer Barson, teach Geology. I also teach online, face-to-face courses, and possibly hybrid. I had taught hybrid before, and now it's coming back.
So we'll just start. This is an example of when you log into our class. It's the first thing you see on the screen. Just some resources where to start, the syllabus, questions and answers. I think what we're going to start with is our objectives today, what we want to cover. So we're going to talk to you about the purpose of our online learning community, and the fact that we had a very community focus. We're very focused on developing community within our online class and creating engaging assessments and activities. We're going to tell you what worked, and we're going to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly. I left in the bad words, too, from our student survey. So we're going to talk to you, discuss about the challenges that we incurred, and also what we learned, and our goals for teaching in 2017, because we're teaching again in winter.
No, and I was going to say, I attended, so the brown bag that you presented on engaging the community was one of the first moments where I thought, I wonder if I paired with somebody else who had a better handle on what I felt was what I was lacking in engagement. So that was one of the reasons, like attending that brown bag, I sent out my email shortly thereafter soliciting who wants to do this with me. Because of what I saw from what you were presenting.
All right, so the purpose of our learning community.
Yeah, so from my behalf, the reason why I even sent out the initial eliciting email was because I wanted to build a better community. So I do teach Geology 100. It's a very basic, entry-level geology course, not meant to transfer for majors. It's a really popular course because it's taken by a lot of students who don't need the major science courses, and the fact that it's online is really convenient for them. But I felt that I just was not building the community that I wanted. I also wanted to see how I could improve their writing skills. So for a student who's in an English class, they might be able to successfully navigate the objectives of an English class, but when it came to having to assimilate and write scientific information, it was easier for them to copy and paste. Their abilities to assimilate and then put a paraphrase or even use new terms to develop what they wanted to write was so hard that it was easier to plagiarize. So they were losing a lot of points just because of their copy-paste tendencies. I also wanted to see if I could increase the success rates by building the community. And then, my faculty in my department are amazing. We're very close knit and it's great. But I also wanted to reach outside of that and see, not that the grass is greener on the other side, but what color is the grass over there? And how do other people do this online thing? It would be great.
I had some of the same ideas and purposes for why I wanted to do a learning community. I wanted to see how I could engage my students more successfully with the course material and build more of that community to ensure perseverance and success. And I thought pairing up anthropology with geology would be really intellectually stimulating for me, but also creating really wonderful what we call pits, putting it together assessments and learning activities, which was a lot of fun. And I thought it would be engaging for our students. I also wanted to look at my success rates, meaning looking at the withdrawal rate, overall their scores, to see if that could be maintained or increased. And we're going to talk more about that later, looking at the online paradox that was discussed in this week recently. I thought it was a very interesting topic. Our topic was the Anthropocene, so looking at what the word Anthropocene means and how humans have completely changed our environment, and what does that mean from the archaeological record as well as from the geological record. And also an opportunity to work collaboratively with other faculty members. That was really important to me. This is an adjunct, and more they're telling us to just do exactly what you're paid to do, which is show up for your teaching. Don't do anything else. You're not here to advise. You're not here to do anything else. And for me, that's stifling. So it's not creative for me, and it's not really what motivates me. So I took this opportunity, and I tried my best.
And I will say, of all the things that I wanted to do, this was probably the most fulfilling for me. Like commiserating with somebody else on how do we make this better, and oh my gosh, we've done so much work, but like the outside faculty part was phenomenal.
Yeah, so my favorites. Okay, so why have an online learning community, right? Everybody understands the benefit of a face-to-face learning community. Well, here's the number one reason, a very good reason, is that the Department of Education reported in 2014, based on a 2014 study, that there are 5.8 million students taking online classes, and that more students are taking online community college level. And we know the reasons why, because of flexibility, and our community college students are working, they have families, they are maxed out, and it's more accessible to take a class online than just sometimes to show up 5 days a week or go to a lab and try to get their degree met on time, right? That persistence and effective demonstration of being on time. However, there's a paradox in this, in that the research shows that students who take online classes significantly, many of them will fail. Students will fail their classes, or they'll do significantly lower. So if you're making a B in a face-to-face class, you're going to earn a C. The paradox is that although you may be failing, some of those students are failing, they're actually graduating faster than those who are taking your face-to-face classes. Okay, so that's the paradox. And so I also wanted to understand how I can make my classes more effective, so we kind of address that paradox. How do you engage that? So what the research is saying is that even though you may not be successful on the average, those students who are very successful in online students, they're persisting. They have those skills to be motivated learners themselves, to ask the right questions, to look up information, to go deeper and dig deeper. They're also motivated to sign up for those classes faster because they get enrolled in faster. So they have those skills that allow them to persevere. And the students who are not doing as well, those are the ones who we need to really address. We need to figure out some strategies to make they're more successful. And also they're saying it's also a registrar problem. So students who are in an online degree program, those classes are available every quarter. But if you're waiting for a science class that has a lab that's only open every other quarter or once a year, then you're having to wait for those classes in order to meet your graduation time. So I was also interested in looking at that. And also we already had our classes online,
Yeah.
right? to YouTube, right? And they figure it out, watch a video on it. But the sources of that data information, they're not evaluating that, and neither were my students in the online classes. So for part of me is that we live in this digital world, and we're constantly interacting with digital media and information, and I wanted them to be able to evaluate that information. Is it quality? What is a primary source? What is a secondary source? Be able to paraphrase that information that you're talking about in a very effective, higher students kind of way. And then also demonstrate effective use of technology, because I want my children and my students to be able to graduate and have these skill set for their job, right? You need to be able to work in a digital environment, use Skype, use online media, use Canva, whatever it is, and be able to have those transferable skills for their job.
And many of you know, if you teach online courses, you can see the ones who will be successful pretty much from the get-go. They're the ones who are posting early. They're the ones who are contacting you and emailing you, asking for help, or even the ones that stop in. So amazingly enough, I'm on campus just about 5 days a week, and I'm available, and I have office hours, but yet I statistically never see my online students, even though over 80% actually live in the county and have other on-ground classes. So you can tell those ones that are going to be successful, the ones who are more likely to actually graduate when they're taking these online courses. And those are the ones that we cherish as instructors, because they kind of help to facilitate what we're looking for. But those weren't the ones that I wanted to work on. Those weren't the ones that I was hoping to grab. I wanted my net to be bigger when I was looking for those students.
So, what are you talking about?
Yeah, so I also thought the information that, so we were trying to put together these two subject areas, and it seemed like such a natural fit to bring anthropology in with geology. It was a really good common ground, what we initially thought. So when we started developing the idea, we were trying to figure out how we wanted to put these two together, and the Anthropocene is a really hot, debatable topic these days. Like, you could just say climate change, you say global warming, and that immediately puts people on either side of a fence. Same with sort of identifying and labeling the Anthropocene. Is man effectually causing enough change on Earth to actually become and have its own time frame in the geologic scale of things? Are we doing that much alteration that we would have this whole new set of geologic time? And so these were some of the questions that we posed to the students right off the bat, and we wanted to kind of marry, and that's where we put a lot of our pits together. So every week we had a putting it together discussion board where we attempted to marry the anthropology topics from that week with the geology topics from that week. And then we also asked them to go a step farther. So we were asking them to extrapolate and think beyond the two subject areas and discuss how they're connected. Like, what's the piece that brings it all together?
We also had our individual
We did.
first learning outcomes as well.
Right, and that was a little bit of a struggle. So when we first met, it was like, okay, what can you do without and what do you have to have? So she had her own set of objectives that she had to fulfill in order to feel comfortable with the content that was being delivered. Same with me. There were things that I could throw out, based on my course objectives. So we had anthropology course objectives, we had geology course objectives, and then we had the outcomes for the sort of the course as a whole. That was up a little bit. Yeah, so this was our entire sort of wrapping course as a whole. What did we want them to get out of this learning community? So we had a separate set of objectives for the learning community, for the bridging of the concepts between the two courses.
So we attempted to build online community in several ways. That was both important for both of us. We did this through establishing the first week of the course, an orientation week, where we build community through a very intensive
why I think, so for me personally, the Panopto videos, the collaborative discussion boards, so as I teach my on-ground lab courses and my students are, slogging through the trenches of their labs twice a week together, they build that sense of community. So I wanted to try to mimic that because they build each other up. They help each other through comprehension. Because in science, it's not always about getting the right answer. It's like, can you appreciate the pathway? Because sometimes you'll often get to the same end result. And so in seeing my students interact in labs, I wanted to try to mimic that online. I wanted to get more interaction with the students because I felt that they would have ownership and that retention would be better if they made connections with people. So in a sense, we wanted our body of students who were sharing 2 courses. There was this shared body of students, so by that means they had to have made deeper connections because they were sharing the same 2 classes with the same body of students. So it wasn't like there were 3 sets of students, there were 2 sets of students that they had to accommodate. They were with the same set of students through the entire quarter.
So we had during the first week, we had the launching pad, and we also had the course orientation module. And had a course overview, very about the basic bullets that you need to be able to pass to be successful to know this information. Professor direction videos. Then we had a very interactive discussion board. Can you show that?
Yeah, we can show that. So one of the things that hit students right off the bat, it's overwhelming. So just our little orientation modules and getting the bits about plagiarism and getting the bits about every little thing and the netiquette and all of that, they're scrolling down and they're like, oh my God, when does it end? And they just get this sort of glaze over, we're so overwhelmed with the information, what do we do at this point? So this is our first orientation. And both of us, when we were going through making our Prezi, it was so much fun. We had way more fun than the students did. Like, it was like we were speed dating, and I was like, I choose you, Teri. I love this. This is so awesome. So every single student who posted, Teri responded and I responded. And we made connections to not only what the student wrote about, because we asked the student to watch a video, right?
Yes.
We asked the student to watch a video about how they learn, if I recall, like technology and learning.
Yeah.
And then they also had, so that was the anthro part of it, and then they also had to talk about a past geologic memory that they had or experience that they had. So both of us were going back and forth, and we tried to integrate images and videos, and we were making personal connections, because there's some pictures of Teri's kids up there, and I think I had some pictures of my kids, and then we're dialoguing back and forth, and we think we're hilarious. Like you saw that one picture of a snake, and that came from a story where Teri was like, oh yeah, I was doing this dig, and I got stuck in this dig, and I was like, oh my gosh, were there snakes in there, like Indiana Jones? And she's like, yeah or no, and I'm afraid of snakes, and I was like, I'm gonna call you Indiana. So it was just this dialogue back and forth, and we put so much work into this,
We had
so much work.
We were trying to model.
We were.
How you respond to your peers, how you build with the community, not just reading information, but having those higher bloom interaction, synthesis, evaluation, interconnection. So we're really trying to model that. And so we just wanted to showcase this example how much fun it was.
Yeah, and then she's posting cat videos. So I mean, we really tried to make this so much fun and so interactive. We wanted them to feel like they were getting to know us and know each other.
And this is in addition to the grading comments that we did.
Yeah.
So we actually scored them using a rubric and then also provided detailed grading comments.
Yeah, we should maybe show them some of the grading comments because they were 750 to 1,000 words. Each of our grading comments to these students because we were attempting to model what we wanted, the depth of their responses. We're lucky to be alive, we'll just say that.
Yeah, we did a lot of it.
We did, yeah.
It goes on.
It does, on pages. Yeah.
So how long does it take you to respond to the whole class comment? I mean,
Days.
Yeah.
Days.
Yeah, we were stressed out.
Yeah. We were, if you looked at the timestamp on some of those, they were like 2 in the morning,
Yeah.
4 in the morning.
that's what it
It was
There were
a lot.
times that I know I did not sleep.
But we did go overboard on that first.
We did. We did. Because we wanted to try to set it up, like how we wanted it, how we imagined this whole thing would be.
So what worked?
Yeah, so from my perspective, plagiarism was almost non-existent. So we're still trying to tease out why it worked, why plagiarism was so significantly reduced. And maybe it was because we were making them go to sources.
I don't know anything about
You
that.
do, okay. Maybe it was because we were making them go to sources where it wasn't as easy to just copy and paste. So the answer wasn't directly associated with the question. You had to think about the question and then you had to write it from a few different angles. So maybe that prevented it. But I noticed it was significantly reduced because we were asking them to more critically put together statements in response rather than just regurgitating the answer to the question. Teri set it up weeks in advance, and this is one of the things that I absolutely loved about that course, was that she, in her assessments, taught them how to look for information, how to value scientific data, how to value any data that they were reading, what are scholarly sources, what are not scholarly sources. And that was something that I generally don't do in my 100 class because I've got to launch into plate tectonics. I'm going to go ahead and assume that you know how to write because I can't spend time on that when I've got these objectives to do. But she managed to work it into both her assessments, and then we had a shared assessment where we made them look at scholarly articles and the importance of where you get that information. And so that was huge. That was big for me to have reduced that overall plagiaristic qualities. And then I developed all kinds of new assessments. Like, as a teacher, there's always a better assessment around the corner, and you always tell yourself, over the summer I'm going to make some fantastic assessments, and they're going to be amazing. But this forced me to do that because I had to make brand new things from scratch because they didn't fit in the cookie cutter mold of my original 100 course. They had to integrate with Anthro. So I made some awesome new assignments, and I'm using them today in my quarter now, and it was great. It was something that made me do it. I didn't sleep a lot, but I had to do it, and I like it now. It's good now. Let's see. I'm trying to think what else. So Teri touched on this significantly, how to evaluate and cite the scientific information. We were great with communicating. Classroom dynamics were good in the sense that we were able to convey the information, and for the most part, they were able to do it. 70% success rate, so it's a little blurry, you can't see it, but this is, there were 4 students who scored under the 55% category. And it was interesting because most of those students all of a sudden tried to throw this Hail Mary pass at the end and were turning in stuff in the last 2 weeks, but they didn't do enough. A little, like maybe 7 or 8 scored in this sort of 65 to 75 range. 10, middle of the road, they made it through. So kind of the moral of our story at the end of this was, man, it was really hard for them, but if they stuck with it, if they stayed with us, if they were here, like mentally, we got them through, they passed. And then we had 4 or so that were in the 85 to 95% range. No one scored above a 95.
So for me, what I thought worked was students made those holistic connections that I was looking for. What is the deep connections between anthropology and geology? How can you make that connect to your footprint right now? Having a broader picture, evolutionary, why are we here and how did we get here? How can we fix it for the future? That was really important to me, and I felt, from my perspective, I felt like in the beginning they weren't there at all. But towards the end of the quarter, they were making those deeper interconnections, really engaged with material. I feel like all of our students know how to evaluate information, knows what a primary source, secondary source is, scholarly information, how to paraphrase that, how to actually cite that information, which is really important within the culture of academia and my own goal of information literacy. I felt like the pits were amazing. So the pits were the putting it together part. So we taught our geology, we taught our anthropology. At the end of the week, we also had a putting it together assignment, discussion board, where they had to take a theme from geology and anthropology were put together. And so my favorite one was trying to find a connection between glaciers and language. And it was fantastic because it was looking at how Native Americans use their indigenous knowledge to describe global change and environmental change and climate change, looking at glaciers and how they do it through narratives and storytelling, and how when Europeans came over, they renamed everything and they used a very specific scientific knowledge, and that indigenous knowledge gets erased over time. But it still has value and meaning. And students, I really enjoyed that, and some of our students got that. Not everybody enjoyed it as much as I did, but our students, it was a different way to look at those problems, and that's really what I was striving for. We were striving for.
Yeah.
And that was fun as well.
Yeah, one of, besides one of the pits that we did one on early human evolution and how that was kind of dictated by plate tectonics. And we did some amazing work looking at Rift Valley fossil data and how plate tectonics at the time would have, either made the resources more available or restricted access to resources, and how that would have forced the evolution of early man. And then another one of those connection pieces that I really liked, Teri kind of touched on a little bit. So she did an assessment on garbage. She made the students track all their garbage. Was it a week? Yeah, so a week long, they had to track all the garbage that they were going to throw away. So they kept it in bags, and then they dumped it out, and they basically looked at all the garbage and where it came from. And then that same week, or it was the next week, where I had an assessment on landfills. And my assessment was global geologic health and how our waste affects the environment, and then ultimately how it will affect your human health and your survival in this world. So that was a really good mix. There were times where, man, it just gelled. Like, it was so easy to run with the information.
I wish we could start challenges.
Yeah.
Okay. So first off, we had some issues with Canvas.
Canvas isn't used to so many chefs in the kitchen.
Yeah. So we would overrate each other. We would both be working on stuff, after the kids are in bed and the dishes are clean, and you get 4 hours to work on something. We'd be working on it from like 12 to 2 or whatever we had time, and we'd be overwriting each other's work.
On the same assessment. So she'd be working on the same assessment, and then I'd click save, and it wouldn't be what I just wrote.
Right? So all that work that I had done. Because we would work, we collaborated, we worked together, she'd add stuff, I would say, we'd feed off each other, and it was just a nightmare. So a lot of that work, 10% of that work, maybe 12,
Yeah.
in the beginning especially, we had to redo. Well, I spent numerous hours on the chat with Canvas.
Yeah.
We would I would try to incorporate stuff from my other classes, and it would overrate stuff.
Yeah. So we try to import
Incorporate anything
something.
from week 1 from your anthropology class into your new course shell,
And
and it
it
would overwrite
overwrite
your week 1 from
everything.
your anthropology.
So anything that I would have
It was like
added
this.
was
I wanted to kill myself.
Yeah.
It was horrible.
It was.
So
So that,
was very hard.
yeah, so we just got used to texting each other. Like, I'm done. You can
Your turn.
go ahead and work on this, or you have 2 hours between this time because I need to work on it then. So get what you need to do and put it in there. And then to an extent, towards the end, we just started feeling pretty confident about, I think, each other's abilities, and we'd be like, okay, well, I can add this part. If you just want to massage it later, I'll tell you when you can get to it, when you can access it.
Yes.
So that was big. That was huge. So frustrating. Yeah.
We didn't know about that.
We didn't.
So everybody who wants to do an online class, right? Or
So it's still not fixed?
No.
Okay.
No. Still not. Yeah.
All right, another challenge that we had was finding appropriate 100 level material. There's a lot of stuff out there that makes those deep questions, but it's not the 100 level
No.
at all.
No.
And another challenge part was that we did all the PITs as OER, so open educational resources, and trying to find something that's at the 100 level that's not a jargon-rich primary source, which is almost impossible. Hence, my favorite PIT, looking at glaciers and language. I mean, that was part of the success story, making it appropriate for what we do.
Yeah, that was really hard because we would be looking up dating fossil material for the East African Rift to provide background information on when, early
Cities
ancestors
were
were forced.
available.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh my God, the charts. It was like a 40-page article, and it was almost all charts on isotope dating, crazy stuff that even a 101 student wouldn't be able to touch with a 10-foot pole. And I'm like, we can't use this. I can't say only look at these 2 paragraphs within the context of that article.
Yeah.
So that was a struggle.
There was a great website called Anthropology, which had a lot of really great videos, and all their information was sourced. So we did have we did luck out on some stuff, but there were like 2 or 3 that we had to really hard at.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work to do those bits,
Right.
but it was also fun. I loved that part. We had a hard time adapting our schedule, going with the flow,
Right.
with the course a little bit.
Yeah. Because we had to alter the schedule from, like I would normally do plate tectonics right at the beginning. And she was like, well, man, that would go really good with this subject. I was like, but I can't do it any other time because that facilitates information about earthquakes and volcanoes. So I have to do that first. So we scrambled a little bit with, the inflexibility of my schedule because they can't talk about volcanoes until they talk about plate tectonics. So then, I think you had to be more flexible than I
But
did.
anthropology is a little more flexible,
Yeah.
so we just switched it up a little bit, but overall it's okay. Grading took a really long time, plus the way that we grade. is
So
very-
we, on each and every assessment, first off, told them what was expected. So we reiterated in short form what they had to have produced. And then we said what they did well, and then what they said what they needed to do to improve, and how to do better the next time. So the crucial part to all of that, when you're writing 750 to 1,000 words of responsive grading comments, is that you have to get it back in a timely manner in order for it to work for them next time. And we were struggling with that always. Like, how do we get this great information back to them so they can improve?
Because the research tells you over and over, if you want your online class to be successful, you have to give them quality grading information, but as fast as possible, like within 24 hours, which almost is impossible for this kind of in-depth that you're doing. So if you want your online students to be successful, you pretty much have to kill yourself.
Yeah.
Not always, but at the time, when you're developing your class as well.
And we did have collaborate issues, so when we were both, chefs in the kitchen on the collaborates, it was sometimes tough for her to take over when it was her time to talk, and me to take over the screen from her when it was my turn to talk. So it looked like we didn't know what we were doing.
One time.
Well, one time. But it only took that one time for several students to say, I will never watch another one again, because they were technologically inept.
Yeah. And to be fair, like we did them in the morning, we did them at night. We had people not watching them, and so it was bad we're not doing them again.
Yeah.
But also, we have life, so you can't always be at campus at the same time. So I sometimes was at the mountain or whatever, and so you have different bandwidth and connectivity. And the students also said that too in their survey. They said it would freeze up on me, so I would, why even bother?
Yeah.
My computer wouldn't work with me.
Yeah.
We also had CTC course ID and enrollment issues at the very beginning. So they gave us the wrong, CTC had the wrong course number, so advisors would try to enroll students into our class. They had the wrong course number. Anything else? We had issues with our advertisement.
Yeah, they
Issues
didn't
with
even get out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think at one point we had 30 students enrolled. That was our maximum number. We ended up with 26.
Yeah.
Probably happy you didn't have any more than that.
Well, yeah, because the capacity was 40,
Yeah.
so we could have had 40. And then, yeah, when we were talking about this last night, like I can't imagine if we'd had 14 more students. Probably would be.
Okay, so what we learned, everybody loves OER. Way more than the textbook.
Yeah, and I even had some
Huge
students that
geology
didn't even
textbook,
use the
right?
textbook. It's required, but yet they still did not use it. And that was one point of contention multiple times, because I was building some of the assessments with the understanding that I was mirroring some of the content from the textbook, but some of them had just opted not even to get it. Because to an extent, all of our big major point assessments were coming from some of these pits, and they didn't have to use the textbook for the pits. So I sort of shot myself in the foot.
So she used the geology textbook. I used OER for anthropology, and we used OER for the pits. We learned about the course content and time management, that students who are really successful in time management will do well in an online class. We already know that. So in the front end, we need to teach, kind of build an assessment within our orientation module, those skills, and then evaluate right there. So if you aren't able to do that this week, this is probably not the class for you, right? that's really important to make sure that students have that management and the perseverance to keep going. We learned from each other on how to teach effectively, right?
Yep.
So grading, how we grade, those kind of things. We changed our rubric. I have been using my rubrics that I designed like quarters ago. I thought they were awesome. Plus, I did this with qualitative feedback as well. And when she does her rubric, she saves a lot of time by doing it, but she's very specific. So we're specific to different areas. And so I've changed my rubrics for all my classes now based on our class. We changed our communication techniques a little bit.
I did.
And research states that online classes we're not very good at teaching online classes, hence the reason why students are not as successful in online classes. And one strategy is that you should do more videos, such as Pinto or whatever. But when we did surveyed our students, they were like, no, not just no, but heck no. I don't want videos on top of reading. Maybe if you just want to do video, if you want to tell me everything and I don't have to do the reading, we go to the primary sources, then that would be a great advantage. So they didn't want the videos. Some students said that, in fact, I tune out the videos. So
It was a majority who said they would not watch videos if we put them up there.
So I just
What,
What are
videos of
videos?
yourselves or?
Like lecture videos. So I had a combination. So I have Google Earth assessments that are really struggling, that are difficult for students. So I always videotape Panopto videos on how to get it all up and running, and with each particular assignment, what you need to focus on and how to make the software work with the questions that I'm asking you. And so towards the end, I started like literally going through some of the questions and being like, okay, this is what you need to do. But I had maybe 2 or 3 students that would watch the videos, max. And they're only, like I always never had them more than 20 minutes long. So it wasn't like they were hours of just blah, blah, blah. It was, fairly short and consistent, but they still did not watch them.
I incorporate videos that not necessarily of me. I have TED Talks or very specific short videos that are really important to the subject and learning that they're having. But I feel like the last thing we do is just hear me drone on about it when we have it that
They still don't listen to those ones, Terry?
No.
Well, no, they enjoy the TED Talks, but I think that if they have those videos, they only watch the TED Talks, and they didn't go to the primary or the readings, right? So it's great. We learned this from Universal Design that you need to have multiple sources of information. So the video people are getting information from videos. The reading people are getting their reading information. Some people want to have that communication, so then you do that through the grading, right? The grading comments, or your collaborates. But not everybody's going to read. So the instructor is trying to meet all these needs, and you're running around, right, with no time. And then you have 3 people utilizing this resource, and 6 over here. So it's a challenge.
And for the assessments, it wasn't like the student would be able to completely fulfill all the assessment needs by only watching the video or only reading the articles. They had to do both because we were trying to assimilate everything, and it was just overwhelming.
So I feel like we're going negative, but for the most part, everybody, we offered a survey. Not everybody participated in the survey. 13 students did. 12 said that they liked it. I guess 14 participated. 2 said it was their seat. Nobody said they didn't like it. Although, when we get into your pits and your favorite assignments, they're all over the place. People like Anthropology, people like Geology.
Yeah.
People like the pits.
And it was crazy because she would be like, wow, I have this student who's really getting it in the anthrop part, and they're so, they're really well versed, and they've got these great, ideas, and I'm like, God, they're terrible in geology, though. They don't get any of this. And so for sometimes we were like, man, in the future, would we give individual grades because there were a couple students who did so much better in anthro versus geology, or so much better in geology versus anthropology? It was very interesting.
But they were getting it in the pits, though.
They were, yeah.
But it's interesting. I have 4 students from our learning community that are in my cultural class.
Yeah.
And they were the ones who did really well with it.
Yeah.
So did you find the geology textbook? Yes, for the most part, but sometimes they didn't have one.
Yep.
Or they only used it for the quizzes.
Right.
Or they had to look up something.
Which made sense why I was banging my head, and they were like, I don't understand how to figure out what kind of plate tectonic setting it is. Like, it's in chapter 2. Pretty Tucker too.
Yeah.
Play tectonics.
OER, everybody uses the OER.
Yeah, they do.
Rubrics. I thought this was really interesting, and this is what we're going to try to build up more in the first week of class. They don't build the rubrics, and they don't read the grading comments, which kills me. So she changed her class this quarter. You offered extra.
I did. I made the students go back and look at how I critiqued them and respond in time back inside the grading comments. So I had an intro discussion board, and I wrote to every single one of my students this quarter. So I made them go back to read what I said to them, respond to what I said to them, and then they had to go to the grading comments and respond to my grading critique so that they were aware. And so I have 70 students, and I probably got maybe 40-some participants.
And you offer extra credit.
6 points, 3 for each part. Yeah.
I do a different strategy. I don't offer extra credit for that, but I sit it in my announcements. I sit it in my grading comment. I sit it in my midterm grades. Okay, so there's 2 people who are failing my class. I'm like, the reason why you're failing is because you're not reading your grading comments, which tells you exactly how to improve your grade. So since then, they've commented, oh yeah, that's really good grade.
Yeah.
I don't do it that way.
It is surprising how many don't read grading comments and never pull up the rubric to see how they could tailor their responses according to the rubrics.
Okay, and this is workload.
Yeah, student workload was
Adequate,
overwhelming.
bit much, adequate, unbalanced.
This guy used lots of caps
You don't
and
know who's anonymous,
expletives
you don't know who did it.
throughout his whole, and it was funny because we had conversations for a while. She thought it was a female, and I was like, no, it's a male because the tone was just so demonstrative.
So when you actually, so that's the qualitative feeling of it,
Yeah.
when you actually quantitatively count it up,
Yeah.
it's only like 4 people, that was too much.
Yeah.
But those are the comments that stick in your head, that burn.
That's what we were like texting each other at midnight
I
about.
couldn't read it
like,
anymore, I was like, I cannot look at this
Yeah.
anymore, after I saw that, the anthropology part was too much reading, now I can stop. I was like, great. All right, so the information about, would you like to watch videos? Not just know.
They didn't want to watch videos. Yeah, hell no.
The topic sessions were.
They didn't watch any. No.
Some things that people loved, other people hated.
Yeah.
So it was all over the place. But they really enjoyed it. And the assessments that we really put our heart into, you can tell. How can we improve the course?
You could do videos of Google Earth tours. Are you kidding me? I made videos. I made them.
So this is the same person who.
Yeah.
But that's what you remember.
I do. Yeah.
Everybody, I think the team changed. I did.
Yeah. So
But we got
collectively,
outcome on that. I mean, we also came through in our assessments as well.
I think there might have been one response where they were like, "No, I already knew it all."
Well,
to
this was
start
like,
with.
I'm still a little confused.
Yeah.
We only spent 2 weeks talking about
All right.
it. But I had a little bit more knowledge.
Yeah.
Communication, everybody thought our communication was.
And that was nice because if she was not available, I got many of the same emails, so I could respond. Even if it was a student question about about anthropology, I'd be like, I'll go ahead and forward this to Teri. She'll get back to you in the next 24 hours. And the fact that they just had some validation of someone hearing them was huge. And then they were able to go about their own business instead of, because she couldn't access it for 24 hours. They weren't just like, oh my gosh, did she get my message? Did it come through? Is she ignoring me? No, somebody responded. So that was great. We had great communication.
Here's the deal though, this is where Canvas is useful. So in Canvas, when you're teaching multiple faculty, or teaching your students, you can click, send an email to your instructors, and the email will go to those instructors.
Yeah.
So they got lots of feedback.
They did.
So those comments were positive even from that one student?
Yeah, all of
who
them
Yeah.
are positive.
Yeah. It was.
So those are our survey results. So what will we change for winter 2017? I'm going to we are going to work with instructional design support, seminar course, they're going to go through it. Do Q&A. We embedded a lot of quality matters work, that's all in there. All of our videos had ADA and a transcript.
about Panopto that you can't do a Collaborate, as far as I know, is you can't see if somebody's watched the Collaborate session, but you can in Panopto. So if that Panopto video is unique to your course, you can see that Joe Smith logged in and watched 8 minutes of the video. And I think that was huge, because I could say, no, you really did not watch the video. How about you go back and watch it and see me again? So even though they hated the videos and they claimed that they did not exist, we're still going to do them, and we're going to try to encourage that they watch parts throughout by embedding some questions into it. We'll see how that goes.
There's another thing that we did. So Jennifer uses reading quizzes. So she'll have like 3 reading quizzes, or two reading quizzes, right?
Yep.
1 or 2. And I didn't do reading quizzes because I have discussion boards that kind of, it's obvious if you read the material, you have to cite everything. So this time I didn't do the reading quizzes. So they had a reading quiz, and they also had an anthropology discussion. And they also had a geology assignment, and a geology quiz, and they had to do pins
Yeah.
every week. So we're going to limit the pins to every 2 weeks. I'm not going to do the reading quizzes anymore because people were just reading the information to answer the quiz. So I don't think I'm going to do the reading quizzes because I felt that added to the workload, and it felt like it was busy work for my other students. So I'm cutting out those reading quizzes. I don't do in my other classes, so I don't really do that. But I did also have a unit exam on the anthropology stuff, which we're going to do create groups and online discussion, and then keep those groups throughout the quarter. We're going to evaluate them and make sure that like one group is not the best group for this job role, because in online classes, the way you build community is through those online discussions, but also they learn from each other, right? And if you have a really great student who's modeling those techniques, they can effectively increase their learning. So we're going to do that.
Yeah, we did have one student who complained
Yeah.
because we were asking them to respond with this really high level connection part. And the student complained that they were capable of connecting, but they were speaking to an audience of idiots. And they could not engage in that high level conversation with said idiots.
With the quote, with people who don't know the difference between their, T-H-E-I-R, T-H-Y-R-E,
Yeah.
or T-H-E-R-E.
Yeah. So it was beneath the student to have conversations with the lesser fellow classmates. It was rare, but you do see that sometimes, you know, when you're getting your responses in your online classes and their responses, yay, that's awesome, cool, thanks for posting.
So some people would only respond to
Certain people, yeah, they got their favorites.
We're going to think about OER and Geology.
We're gonna look into it.
We're going to give extra credit. Think about giving extra credit for the first week. Responding to the comments.
Uh-huh.
So we're working on designing a qualitative assessment to evaluate the synthesis of certain deeper concepts in our 100 level classes, and then using that same assessment in our learning community as well to evaluate the learning, those higher blue taxonomy things we're looking at.
Yeah, and the one thing too, and I struggle with this in my online class, and I think that we will for the future class, is, man, it would be fantastic, and maybe they have it out there, but some sort of class on teaching students how to take an online class. Because we spend an awful lot of time making videos and taking screenshots of how and where to check your grades and how to submit things and how to choose the files that you submit. There's an awful lot of people who don't know how to add photos to their discussion boards or add attachments. Why do I have to teach them that? I'm supposed to teach them about rocks.
And that is in the launching pad.
It is.
But they don't, and they have to take a launching pad quiz, but it's not making that deep resonance. So for me, I would like to make the launching pad a little more specific for our class and things for our class. And we kind of do that in our online discussion board, but make it a little more specific. And some kind of assessment that actually gets at the students' ability to, I don't want to say be curious, but the ability to ask the right questions. Because really at the end of the online class, you're learning your material, but you're also getting students who know how to find the information, how to ask those right questions. I feel like that's part of the success rate in those online courses that's not being revealed. Like, how do you get that quality and teach that to everyone, you know?
Right, they go from relying on Wikipedia to multiple other sources for their information because they're aware of the utility and the scientific value in looking at something outside of Wikipedia.
I would like to have a weekly schedule, so the students should have, okay, on Monday I should do this, it's a good idea, on Tuesday to do this. Have some OER hacks, like, okay, so there's no, for anthropology, there's no online OER one textbook. So it's divided into 4 areas: linguistics, culture and anthropology, archaeology, and biological. So there's multiple resources for those different areas. And so an OER, I've put up a video on how to create your own index, so to speak, and how to create your own running bibliography, so you know where to find that information, you know, a different source that you don't remember from 2 weeks ago or studying the test. So I have a little video or clip on how to do OER hacks. So that's all I have. Oh, we wanted to ask you, what advice do you have for us?
How are you gonna do it again without killing yourselves again? How are you gonna,
Yeah, well,
you gotta reduce the workload somehow.
Well, we kind of, that's one of the things that we are sweet talking ourselves back into doing this one more time, is because we put so much effort that we're gonna go with a lot of the curriculum that we've already made. We're just gonna tailor it a little bit because we'll have the time. Now, I know both of our personalities will probably still get way too involved in the assessment. I can't promise that I won't kill myself again, because it was that, I don't know, I had so much, man, I believed so much in what we were offering. It was, I'll do it again.
I think I'm going to pare down. I'm not doing the quizzes, the reading quizzes. I don't want students to feel like they're just being picked upon. We're going to divide our kids into half. We're going to make them build the first rubrics.
We're gonna
So
have them.
they know exactly, so they're building the rubric, they know exactly they have to go back and read the rubric, they're going to know it. They're going to have a cohort with them, every cohort throughout the whole quarter to know, build up that community themselves, so we don't have to do so much of that. That burden is not on us. They're doing it within the system. What else are we doing? I'm paring down my anthropology even more. I feel like I've done enough to alter that even more.
Yeah.
I have 2 things. One is I'd like to ask why students do not like to watch your lecture video. And then second thing is to not kill yourself. I just like to know, is that like every discussion topic you both gave each student 750 to 1,000 words comment? And why it has to be that long? That's my question.
Well, because we were trying to model what we wanted out of them, what we wanted them to produce.
Did it make an impact?
No.
No.
Well, some.
No, it did.
Yeah,
It did.
some.
But if you read the comments, those who
Yeah.
were reading the comments, it made a huge impact.
Yeah, it did.
Those who didn't read the grading comments, they are like clueless.
Right.
And you could see that coming through in the pits, because when she talked about geology, and I talked about anthropology, we knew what the pit was for that week, and we could incorporate that stuff so they knew it for the putting it together side, which is the end of the week, you know? So those students who, that's what I'm saying, I think part of the success story of online classes is not whether you know the material or not, it's that you know how to navigate that, and you're savvy about how to take an online class, and know what questions to ask, and how to get those resources to be successful. So part of that, we need to figure out that in the beginning, so that all students have that. Maybe it's motivation students, maybe it's students are simply, this is their first online class they've ever taken, I don't know. But some kind of assessment needs to happen at the beginning of the career, so we know where they are. So yes, we still kept up that grading comment bit, because that's our only tool that we have, that we know that people are invested in their grades. So they're gonna go check their grades eventually. And they're like, why did I get a 5 out of 10 or whatever on this score? And they're gonna go figure out what the instructor said, they're gonna read that. From my perspective, that's why I do that. Throughout the quarter, we did less and less and less and less in the individual discussion, real time, because there's no way we can keep that up.
Yeah. I mean, and when I think about it, in my on-ground classes, I'll come to them after they've taken a quiz or an exam or some sort of an assessment, and I'll say to the whole group, this is what you guys could have improved on. Here's how we're gonna do it differently. And this is our version of doing that, because we're not seeing these students regularly face to face. But it was difficult because we literally tailored each comment to the specific student and the work that they submitted.
Well, I had 2 suggestions. You had mentioned lab partners and one-on-one, so trying to mimic that, where you're struggling together to complete a task together, but online. know that they read the rubric because they responded to it. And then I give them their feedback, and then they have to respond to my feedback, kind of like what you're
Yeah.
saying. But that first piece of assessments against the rubric might help.
Right, and that's what we're hoping to do. So instead of doing a pit every week, we're gonna do a pit over 2 weeks. And in that first week, it's not like they don't have any job, because they are going to be trying to come up with a rubric or reevaluate. It's almost like a rough draft. Like, how are you in this process? Are you developing what we need you to do? And kind of have that self-assessment check. So we are gonna try to incorporate that this time around.
Yeah, so, exactly.
I really like how you structured your long comments about this is what the expectations were, this is what you were doing well towards that, this is where you were falling short, and this is how you get there.
Yeah.
That's great.
And that was one of the things that I changed for myself this quarter as I learned, because I always just provide the negative feedback. I always say what you did wrong, and I should know better because I'm a parent. You know, you're not supposed to do it that way. But I assumed these were grown-ups and they can handle a little bit of constructive criticism. But they did better with the positive parts that we talked about first, and then not what you did bad, but here's what you can improve on. So I do that now, and it's a little bit more lengthy. I don't do it to the extent that we did it the quarter before, but I do go through. Here's what you did great. I loved this part. You went the extra mile to add the picture. Fantastic. This is what I need you to do next time. Yeah.
How did the 70% success rate compare to your standalone online?
Same, yeah. It's about the same.
That's really actually pretty good though for a first-time online learning community that is stable.
We did.
But I actually think that the challenges that you experienced were endemic to learning communities and not endemic
Oh,
to
really?
online.
This is our first learning community
See,
ever.
I'm actually pretty shocked that you did a learning community for the first time, either one of you, in a new format, because what you're describing to me, I mean, I've done learning communities for 20 years here, and what you're describing is very endemic to learning communities in general.
Face-to-face class.
Face-to-face. So if Heather and I work on a learning community, we're meeting together 20 hours a week. We're like always together, and we're always grading, and we're always folding our curriculum, and we're always having those same sorts of struggles of how do we blend outcomes, and how do we, and we're always, it's just the nature of the learning community piece.
Well, that makes me feel
And
better.
so,
But then the
So how do we do it?
second
It's
time,
much easier.
so much easier.
Oh,
And that's why we're selling ourselves on the
Absolutely.
fact that
Yeah.
we're gonna do it.
And-
I mean,
you
it's
will-
not like just sweet talking yourself.
No, it's not.
actually easier.
yeah,
The students are happier?
Oh, yeah, it's totally easier because you know you've got a solid footing, and not only because you're not an anthropologist, you had to learn her stuff,
Yeah.
and she had to learn your stuff, and now that you know it, you have a better footing.
Yeah, I don't just
And
call it
so-
monkeys anymore.
There you go.
There's a difference.
And so there's a difference.
Kill the
And-
rocks.
And so now you'll have a better footing, and you'll be amazed at how much easier it is. But I think that the struggles that you're describing are not because of the online environment. I think the struggles that you're describing is because it's endemic to LCs.
So the students complain about the workload?
Oh my God.
Really?
But we
Totally.
fought, like, we would go back and forth about that, because she kept saying, oh, well, maybe I should offer less, and I'm like, gosh, would you offer less if you were offering that as a standalone course?
Students are
Like, how do
like,
they not get that they are putting 2 5-credit courses
No,
together?
they're,
You should
because
expect.
Because you did your job. Your job was to help them understand that this was one class. And so in their brain, it's one class.
Yeah.
So for
It's way too
them,
much for one
for
class.
exactly, why do I have all this work for one class? And
But they
so
got 10 credits.
you did a great job for them, making it feel like one class. And so that's brilliant. So that's why.
I actually could almost cry. Like,
Yeah.
I feel validated.
We still have PTSD.
You should love it.
We didn't talk about the comrade part, but we are comrades.
Yeah,
we are.
And you should feel like you were in the trenches. That's one of the,
Oh, yeah.
the reason I teach learning communities and keep teaching them is because it is the single best faculty development experience I've ever experienced. Because you learn and you grow as a
We echo
teacher.
that, yeah.
even on weeks where there's not much, they still have to post something, even if it's just, hey, how was your weekend? And so they're constantly, I'm tracking how much they are posting to each other, even if it's not about work related stuff.
Do they
And I
like